Adversity either crumbles you or becomes foundational to your success.
We require a certain level of adversity.
How you deal with adversity.
Want success? Model the best. So today, let's learn one of the most common rules that successful people follow: overcome adversity.
Adversity either crumbles you or becomes foundational to your success.
It's insane.
I always think about that picture where it looks like two people kissing or like a glass of champagne, like like the flute. I'm so fascinated by perspective. The amount of people who decide in your situation when you hurt your back that see, it was just about to get good, but God took it away from me, and just give up is a lot.
Absolutely.
I mean that. And then people who go into a wheelchair because they're paralyzed and decide that's the platform that they're gonna use to change the world. I'm just so fascinated by perspective.
How do I gain more confidence?
It starts with yourself, man. You gotta start diving into those things that you are afraid of. You don't gain confidence by going to the spot that makes you feel good. It's gonna be a false reality. And the second life gives you that challenge, all you wanna do is go back to what made you confidence or what gave you confidence. Is that happy spot? No. What gives you confidence, what gave me confidence, was spending years at a kitchen table trying to learn how to read and write on my own. Realizing I can't learn the way you learn. I can't, but I can learn. What gives you confidence, not being afraid, is overcoming the fear. I used to stutter severely bad. So right now, I don't know how many people are gonna watch this. You know what gives me confidence? Is knowing I no longer care if I sit here and start stuttering to you.
Yeah.
That's what gives me confidence, is facing these things, overcoming them. And maybe not overcoming them every day, but facing them. And facing them and facing them. Pretty soon like this, you know what, man, this is where it's at. It's not in that comfort zone. It's in the discomfort zone is where my confidence is getting built. That's where it's getting built. But people want an easier answer.
Yeah.
There has to be an easier way. There's not. I'm sorry. I searched for it my entire life.
I was evicted when I was 14 years old, and then we were forced off the island of Hawaii to move. Of all places, we had to move to Nashville. And we lived in a little motel, and I was trying to remain as positive as I could.
And now your company is called $7. Why is that?
$7. So my goal was to play in the NFL, but that didn't happen for me. I went up to the Canadian Football League. I played up there.
Yeah.
I got cut from there, flew back down to Miami. My old man was living in Tampa. I called him at midnight when I landed. I said, you gotta come get me. On the way back up to Tampa, I said, God damn, let me see how much money I got. I pulled out my wallet, I opened it up, I took out a 5, a 1, and change. And that's why we have $7, $7 production.
So there's this really interesting fact that a very large percentage, a much larger percentage of successful entrepreneurs are dyslexic than in the general population. And many of the Richard Branson, Paul Orfalea, Charles Schwab, John Chambers at Cisco, I could go on, Craig McCaw, the cell phone pioneer. The list of, these guys are all dyslexic, right? David Neilman at JetBlue. And if you talk to them, they will explain to you that they don't think they succeeded in spite of their disability, they think they succeeded because of it. For them, and if you walk, and I sat down with 24 of these guys. I got sort of obsessed at the beginning of my book, in the middle of my book, with talking to dyslexic entrepreneurs. And their stories are all the same. They all look back and will tell you, if it hadn't have been for the fact that I couldn't read or read well in 2nd and 3rd and 4th grade, I would never have, and they start listing all the things they were forced to do that proved to be ultimately advantageous. I would never have learned how to listen. I would never have been forced, in 2nd grade, I made friends with the smartest kid in the class, and I basically convinced him to do my homework for me. I can't tell you how many times I heard that from these people. So what are they learning at that age? They're learning delegation. They're learning how to communicate with other people, motivate other people, form a team. I mean, they do that in, Brian Grazer, the Hollywood producer who's dyslexic, his whole thing was he would he figured out how he would fail his tests, and he would go in and he would talk his grade up from a D to a C. So from the age of this high, he's learning negotiation, right? And by the time he hits college, he's brilliant at it. And then what does he do? He becomes a Hollywood producer. What is that about? It's about negotiation, among other things, and he's been practicing his entire life. So it's this sort of weird thing where he would say, as difficult as my dyslexia was, and for all of these people, their childhoods were not fun. I mean, I interviewed Gary Cohn, who's the president of Goldman, who's profoundly dyslexic. And his childhood just sounds, dark and miserable. No one thought he was capable of doing schoolwork. They thought they were amazed that he even graduated from high school. Despite that, they all look back and they say, you know what, it was a desirable difficulty. I was forced to learn stuff I would never even have thought about. In order to learn the things that really need to be learned, we require a certain level of adversity. The trick is figuring out what that adversity ought to look like, right? And that's, like I said, something that can only be decided on a case-by-case basis. It's going to be different for you than it is for me.
Also, if you want to learn how to have more confidence, check out my 254 series. It's free. The links to join are in the description below.
I really think mindset is everything, and so you've got to really decide, are you going to be positive about things or negative about things?
My call time is at 7, then you back your clock up 4 hours, and then that's when I get up.
Everything I didn't want to do is what got me to where I'm at today.
Being an entrepreneur is one of the hardest things you'll ever do in your life. Whether you go all in financially or not, you're going to go all in emotionally. And a lot of people, they can't cut it. They can't get the calluses fast enough, and so they quit. That's going to be one of the biggest tests for you as you get off and build your business. Do you have the mental fortitude to keep going, keep driving, keep building your business in the face of all obstacles? It's the ultimate endurance test. It's the ultimate test to see what you're made of. When I first started my company, I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't think it would be this hard. You never think it's going to be as hard as it actually is. I was making $300 a month. I turned down $100,000 a year, 6 figures, working for my dream job company to make $300 a month and own 30% of a company. I eat beans for lunch every day. The same bean salad for lunch, mixed beans with olive oil and herbs and garlic and salt and a little pepper, because it was cheap and it would fill me up. And when I wanted to splurge, I would go to the store and get the chunky Campbell's soup clam chowder. It was a little bit more expensive, would also fill me up. When we went to celebrate a win, we would go to McDonald's and get a McDonald's French fries, large fries, and share it between the 3 of us because that's what we could afford. Couldn't afford the whole meal. And even to this day, the smell of McDonald's French fries means victory for me. It's the most unhealthy thing in the world, but it still means victory for me. I made it even harder on myself in that I isolated myself and I didn't tell my friends that I was struggling. I had to pick one thing a month that I could go to, one friendly, social pizza and beer kind of thing per month. Because that $20 I didn't have, because I'm only making $300 a month. So I isolated myself, I turned inwards. I was too embarrassed and ashamed to tell my friends who were off making $80,000, $100,000 a year, starting salary at a university, and I'm making $300 a month. I was too embarrassed and ashamed. And so I told them, I'm hustling, I'm living the entrepreneur life, I'm grinding, but really, I was struggling. I had no idea what I was doing. This thing was tearing me apart. And it got to the point where I actually quit on my business partner. I told him I quit. It's easy to quit on something and not get results when you know that you're not putting in the effort. But I was putting in the effort every single day, showing up to my business partner's dining room table because everything else was too small in his place to fit us. Putting in the effort every single day, trying to build and grow this business, and it wasn't working. I felt worthless as a human. Like, why are we not getting results? When will we start to get results? And I was fed up and tired, and I told him I quit. Like, I need to find a way to be useful, to feel valuable as a human. And so I told him I quit. And then I woke up the next day and said I can't quit because I haven't given it everything that I've got. And so there's a 2-step process that saved me, that I hope will save you if you're feeling down and out and it's tough and you're not getting results. The first step is use regret to fuel you. I imagine my life at 100, looking back on this moment, saying, would I regret quitting? It's very rarely the things that you do that you regret, it's the things that you don't do. So would I regret not continuing? Would I regret not giving it my all? And I try to adopt the mantra that I would rather know and fail than not know. I would rather know and fail than not know. So I had to see this through. Even if the answer was total failure, even if it never worked out, I had to see it all the way through just to know, because otherwise that regret would eat me up. And so number one, use regret. When you're struggling, when it's not working out, when you're not getting results, imagine yourself being 100 years old looking back and saying, if you quit now, if you stop, if you don't keep going, will you regret it? Number two is model success. The next thing that saved me was I asked myself that next morning after I quit and then decided I need to go back because I can't live with regret. I asked myself, who has done this before? Who has built a software company up? I can't be the only person who's tried to do this. And I looked at Bill Gates, who started Microsoft, and not how he makes an extra $1 million now, but 0 to 1. How did he do that? How did that happen? I studied his success. I modeled his success. I applied it to my company and pretty shortly got my first deal for $13,500. That may not seem like a lot of money, but to me back then, it was hitting the lottery. I'm making $300 a month. Now I just made a deal for $13,500. That was hope. That was real. That was putting money in my bank account. That was being able to have a full meal at McDonald's. And more important, it gave me a model that I could do again and again and again. I closed another deal and another deal and another deal. And our business started to take off. And ever since, that was 20 years ago, I used the same two-step process.
So I had my first rock bottom, which was the bathroom floor, pregnancy test, eviction from my life as a drunk and a bulimic, right? That's what rock bottom is to me. It's like an eviction from your life. It's whatever happens that there's a before and after, so whether it's like it's a diagnosis or it's an announcement that you of in a marriage, it's whatever it is that divides your life into before and after. So the first one was the bathroom floor and the pregnancy test. And then the second one, after that first one, I got married and had the baby and had 2 more babies and became this like grown-up vertical person that I was just amazed, like an upstanding citizen, I guess about 10 years into our marriage. And Craig revealed to me, I was clueless about this, but he revealed to me that he'd been unfaithful to me our entire marriage. So in less of a relationship way and more of like a serial one-night stand kind of way. So anyway, that was a big, huge rock bottom for me because it was the most painful day of my life. The thing about rock bottom is, and pain and being evicted from your life, is that you live in the emotional spot of it. And the emotional spot of it tells you, well, everything's over and this is the darkest time of my life and nothing's ever going to be good again. But then you have this wise side of yourself that's been there before and knows that rock bottom, what it really is a crisis. Okay, so we all want to avoid crisis, but what crisis literally means is to sift. Okay, like a child who goes to the beach and lifts up the sand and watches all the sand fall away, hoping that there's treasure left over. Yep. So that's what crisis does. It sweeps into our life and it forces us to hold up our life and let everything fall away that we thought we needed so that we can find out what's left over, right? Like what can never be. And that's why people who have been to rock bottom are the people who are wise and kind and brave and able to laugh at the days to come, because these are the people who know that the way this life is designed is that the only things you need are the very things that can never be taken from you. Right? So fear just goes. So it's sad for me that I've been to this individual rock bottom and marriage rock bottom, but oh my God, I wouldn't change any of it because I'm just not freaking scared anymore.
I don't know, there are very few people, you look at the most successful people in the world, I know very few of them that haven't had a major failure. If you read through they're not the financially most successful people, if you read through the Forbes billionaire list and you read their stories, they've had failed businesses and they've lost everything and they've hung on they've almost died holding on to the ledge, what's his name, the guy on CBS and Sumner Redstone.
Redstone, yeah.
So there are lots of examples of people who had huge adversity. And I think it's how you deal with adversity that determines your ultimate success, as opposed to how you deal with success that determines your ultimate success.
In 2010, I kind of called myself, I'm a meathead. I just lift weights and put them down, right? I had kind of painted myself into that corner. Why not go run a marathon? So I trained for 6 weeks and went and ran a marathon. It was the most painful thing I ever did, but I realized that was more the suffering and the pain. And the more pain I had, the more it put me into the zone of wanting to dominate. So it is a superpower. So I almost now go back and put myself into these challenges. Rock climbing, I was afraid of heights, took on a 6-week challenge, started climbing rocks. Wanted to fight a professional MMA fighter, so I hired him, trained for 6 weeks, went in the ring and got my ass kicked and choked out. But each time I did that, it gave me the sense of, I can get over any obstacle. And if I can get over getting choked out and punched and the pain of 26.2 miles on a marathon, or overcoming my fear of heights, surely I can build a business. Surely I can take some criticism online, right? But not enough people are willing to build that mental, emotional toughness. And the moment they do, they'll persevere.
You say like, yeah, you establish yourself in the hip hop world, but it wasn't not an easy road. It's kind of like I had a lot of obstacles. Just me not being able to speak the language. My Korean was definitely not up to standard. Even now it's like I understand maybe and can read and write and do like maybe 85, 90%. But before it was at like 20%. And me being from a group, like a boy band background and whatnot, everybody was very, very skeptical. But, it's like if you just keep at it, it took about 7-8 years, but here I am today.
As Confucius said, when it's obvious that the goal cannot be reached, don't adjust the goals, adjust the action steps. That may be the single best piece of advice you're ever going to get. Write that down, burn it into your flesh, tattoo it on your soul, do whatever you need to do to remember that once you set a goal, once you've decided in your life there is something that you're going to make come true, don't let anything stop you from reaching that. But the reality is, as you go, things are going to get in your way. There will be an inevitable slew of obstacles coming at you. But when it gets so hard that you realize that the path that you're on is simply not going to take you where you want to go, rather than give up on what it was you said you were going to do, find a different path. And in that, when you really make that the cornerstone of your identity, that you refuse to bend or be broken by obstacles, by challenges, but instead you rise to those challenges. You go over, under, through them. You do whatever you have to. You devise any plan to find a way through. Then your life will change. Once that becomes your reaction, to not change that thing that meant so much to you, that you dedicated your life to making it come true, that you don't change that, but rather you find another way. You tap into your creativity. You find somebody that can help you. You do whatever it takes to get on the other side of that. You do whatever it takes to build that life that you want to see. But if your reaction is to change your goal, to make it easier, to move it closer, to be less of who you could be, simply so you can check a box, you're never going to have anything that's worth having.
Now I've got a special bonus clip from Mike Tyson on how to overcome adversity that I think you're going to enjoy. But before that, it's time for the 3-point landing questions. Time to go from just watching the video to taking action. Here we go. Question number 1, what's the big adversity you're facing in your life right now? Number 2, how are you going to attack it today so you can grow through it? And number 3, how are you going to stay consistent on attacking that adversity every day?
How would you describe your neighborhood?
It's really drug infested, violence infested, crime infested, just a big cesspool most of the time.
When did you want to be a fighter?
I never thought about being a fighter till I was in a detention school, and a gentleman by the name of Bobby Stewart would box with the kids if they behaved well and got on the levels, and they could blow up some steam, and then he started showing me how to box. I never had a pair of boxing gloves on in my life. I was probably 12, 13. I never had a pair of boxing gloves on in my life. And he said, you can do this. Since I started training with him, and then he took me to Custom Model, and he said, if you could change your life and not go back to, yeah.
How bad do you want it? Check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
I want it as bad as I wanted to breathe.
Most people don't want it enough.
Because you gotta want it, man.